Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Corey, and I'm the founder of beatingtrauma.com. And I'm here today to talk to you about the way trauma is impacting our lives, specifically around beliefs and unexpressed emotions that may be showing up in patterns that we're not super happy about. So, I'm here today to talk about what we can do about that because it's really frustrating when we go through a childhood full of trauma and we get to our adult life and we're like, now I'm going to really live. Now I'm going to be free. I'm going to be able to do what I always wanted. And it feels like we're still mired in a lot of the same beliefs and patterns, and it can just make us feel really stuck, and I'll be honest, it can bring up a lot of futility in our system when we're in this place. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of what we might be storing in our system that are keeping us from living our best life, to use a phrase that's way overused, but in this case, it works. So today we're going to talk about our beliefs about purpose, because we can often have a lot of beliefs around purpose that are stemming from our traumatic experiences. And so the other day I actually posted a post that had originally come from Jeff Brown. And I don't know if you follow him or not, but he has some similar perspectives to the ones that I have about many things, not everything, but a lot of things. And so I posted this thing that he said that really kind of resonated with me, and many people also responded the same way after I posted it. But it basically said not to see purpose and our healing journey as separate things, but that our healing journey is often really a huge part, if not all, of our purpose. And I think that is important. The reason it really hit me is because there's something I've talked about a lot, which is this idea that there's healing and then there's life after healing. This is kind of a typical belief system that we might have. And I will say that this particular belief system is run quite a bit by that controller. So the controller part that I talk about, they will say things like, once you heal, life will be great. You just need to get through these emotions as fast as possible and out to the other side. And then rainbows and unicorns, life will begin. Everything will be golden. Everything will be wonderful. Just get done with this feeling stuff. Like, finish that, right? And as soon as you finish it, everything will be good. And this, I think, is sort of what Jeff is getting at in his post. It's like, hey, don't think like life's after healing. Oftentimes our life purpose is this healing path. That said, I also want to stress that what I see from my clients and within myself and my own journey over and over again is that as we start healing our trauma, we start to get little tidbits of information, little tiny signs that there's something we're supposed to do. So this is when we get into the controller's favorite thing, which is, I need an external task, right? I need an external thing to do. And when I find that external thing to do, then I'll be okay. Life can't just be about healing. I need to do things, right? And I will say that a lot of us do have a purpose where we're going to do something that is beyond healing. But here's the thing. It's deeply, deeply connected to the healing journey. You cannot parse them apart. And what I find is as we move through the healing, we start to get these little snippets, these little bits of information, these little kind of clues and signs as to what that might look like. Now, don't get me wrong, I often talk about this idea of our intuition sounding crazy. So I want to be really clear that when we first start to hear it, it's gonna sound crazy. Or maybe what I should say is our defenders will tell us that it's crazy. Okay. So what I often say about purpose from that perspective is when you start to get these little bits of information, And then you hear, that's crazy. That'll never work. There's no way. It can't be done. It's not going to happen. It's, no. That's probably something worth listening to, because what I have found is the more resistance we have to something that is coming up in our system, oftentimes that means it's something we should really spend some time with. Like that's got some potential for us. And I'm sure you guys have seen all the messages out there that say, go through the fear, right? Like what you want is on the other side of your fear. Like there's a lot of those messages out there. Oftentimes what it is we're going to do with our healed selves, so to speak, in the world will be on the other side of that fear. However, what is often missed in this journey is what that fear sounds like. Because the fear doesn't really sound like fear. It sounds like a logic. Because the truth is, we as a human, as humanity in general, right? It's not even specific to certain cultures, really. But as human beings on this planet, we tend to have a lot of resistance to our purpose. So that means that the controller and their logic is actually based in what we're being told by society for a very, very, very long time, like generations and generations. So it sounds right. And this is where it gets tricky, because fear can sound accurate, okay? As a matter of fact, doing things that go against that logic can sound crazy. And this is why oftentimes those defenders who hold a lot of our fear can be really, really successful at holding us back from our purpose, okay? And they'll do it with healing too, and they'll do it in the same way. Most of us have some fear of the emotional ramifications and the life ramifications of healing our trauma. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So the same fear that works towards keeping us from taking steps towards something externally purposeful, it's the same fear that keeps us from healing on a deeper level. Amy's saying, I'm working towards my purpose and my parts are stopping me in my tracks at every turn. And yes, they will. Yes, they will. I mean, and I'm speaking about this today because I deal with this same blocks. And so what I decided would be great to do today is actually talk about all the beliefs that I've discovered in myself that have blocked me from my journey, like, the purposeful aspect of my journey and where I want to go. And so this whole list I'm going to talk about today is actually all the things my defenders have said to me or are saying to me to keep me from taking those steps. And again, like Jeff Brown said, healing and that external purpose that we're talking about are very, very tied together. And oftentimes healing is purpose. It's enough of the purpose, right? So you're going to see some of the same strategies used to block both, right? And those are the ones coming from the defenders. So I'm going to talk about a few other beliefs that I have around my purpose and see whether or not this sounds familiar to you. The next one is, I don't have a purpose. So this is a belief system we may hear from our defenders, right? So I don't have a purpose, which can be translated to, depending on whether this is coming from a significant shame place, I don't deserve a purpose, or this whole purposeful concept is for others and not for me. So I don't have a purpose can be a controller argument. Like, not everybody has purposes. It's sort of silly, whatever. Purpose, that's dumb. That's stupid. That's not real. That's just something people tell themselves to make themselves feel better. Okay, that's the controller perspective. The other side of it is more of that karma kid purpose. Well, other people have a purpose, but not you. You don't deserve a purpose, right? Like that's that message that's coming from the shame. Purpose is for others. Purpose is for people who are better. Purpose is that's not really your thing, right? So that's going to be that karma kid way of looking at it. So speaking of karma kid, Simon is saying, my God parts are so abusive. Hope you're all okay. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important for us to recognize that our parts can send a ton of like really abusive language in our direction. They can inundate us with fear and shame and other emotions. We also, one of the things that I encourage my clients to keep in mind is they are repeating things that were said to you, especially karmic-headed controller, and they believe they're keeping you alive by what they are doing and the ways they are stopping you. Because it's important to recognize that a lot of the time we have contracts that go against our purpose. So it's good to recognize that if we actually do the thing we are here to do, and that's outside of healing ourselves, which is a huge part of it, we are breaking contracts. We are literally doing things we have been told we are not allowed to do. It's important for us to recognize that is likely there. So these parts actually think they're saving you. Now, of course, that's not really the case, but a lot of the ways we were manipulated as children can turn out to become things that are dramatically holding us back in our adult lives. And let's see. And Amy is saying, yep, paralysis, literally can't move, you can't do anything. You aren't good enough, you're too old, and on and on. Oh, that's a great one, Amy. Thank you for bringing up you're too old. Oh my gosh, I hear this from my clients so much, right? You're too old. So that's a good one, right? And you're too old, by the way. I've seen it start in my clients when they're still in their 30s. Like, it's just a ridiculous fear-based excuse. It's not real. It's never going to be real. You're not too old for anything. I don't care if you're 75. If you have time left, you are not too old. But that is a big one. Huge. And remember that the controller is very, very connected to time and money. Time and money, time and money. So one of the big things they're going to tell us about why we can't do something is either going to focus on time. So you either don't have time or, like in your day, or you don't have time in your life. So you're too old, right? So that's that messaging. Or it's going to be, you don't have the money for that. The money isn't available for that. But what I find with a controller is they'll tell you there's no money for that, but there's plenty of money for something else. As long as it doesn't scare the controller, there's money available. Like that kind of thing tends to be something we can spot if we're looking for it, because it oftentimes is there. Simon is saying, what are you doing for your purpose? And, feel free to respond to Simon about what you're doing for your purpose. Hopefully it is obvious what I am doing with my purpose at this point. And I will say that about, 13, 14 years ago, I just literally threw away an entire IT program management career and went back and got my master's in social work. And here we are today being a life coach. A pretty dramatic change, but I also want to be clear. And I was actually going to talk about this a little bit later, but I'll talk about it now, which is purpose has to be dramatic. Like your purpose has to be something where it's like everybody knows you're doing it. You're highly visible. You're all out there in the public. You've completely changed your life to make room for it. And if it's anything smaller than that, it's not really your purpose. And this is kind of a controller thing to do, to say it's got to be huge or it's nothing, right? Because the controller is very all or nothing, right? They're like black and white there. And so the controller will try to tell you that it's not enough, especially when you first get started and you're taking smaller steps, which by the way, you should. Then the controller will say, well, it's not enough. It's not big enough to be a purpose. It's not bold enough. It's not visible enough. It's not, you haven't completely thrown your entire life up in the air and flipped it around. So it can't possibly be your purpose. And it doesn't have to be. So I'm telling you that as I tell you the story where in fact mine was a fairly dramatic change. I mean, I went from doing one thing to doing something completely different in almost every way. Although I will say that my program management and IT experience have come in quite handy in this work, but it was a really dramatic change for me. And so my purpose is clearly doing this. But I will also say that there are aspects of my purposeful work I have yet to be able to step into. And those are the beliefs I'm sharing with you today. The things that block us and get in our way in this journey are the things I'm gonna, that am still working through. And some of those show up as these beliefs we're talking about today. So so that was another one, it's going to be big and massive and monstrous purpose where everybody in the world knows you're doing it. No, not necessarily. That may not be your thing, right? So here, another one. This is another controller belief right here that I want to share with you. If I don't know my purpose, I never will. And this goes along with other denial concepts in this journey. So, for example, if I don't remember something, I'm not going to suddenly be able to remember it. Or if I forgot it for a reason and it's gone and that's it. And I'm never going to get at those emotions because I put them away for a reason and that's where they're going to stay. So this idea of sometimes I like to refer to it as like fake futility. So it's a controller thing. There's real futility. There's a lot of real futility, but this particular style of sort of denying things about where we want to go is what I call the controller's fake futility. It says, oh, there's no point. It'll never work out. You'll never get there. You'll never figure it out. You'll never this, you'll never that. But it's really just meant to sort of shut us down on the journey, right? It's not real. It's a lie, which a lot of what the controllers tell us are lies. They're coming from this frontal lobe. They're coming from the mind. The mind makes things up, right? The body does not. And this is when we can really start to make big differences in our healing journey, when we recognize that what the mind is telling us is often a denial thing. What the body is telling us is the truth. Follow those emotions. They're telling the truth, right? So when you hear that message of it'll never work out, it's never going to happen, you don't even bother. You're not going to get there. That can be the controller just telling you a story. Now, the other side of it is you may be hitting on some flashback futility. This is because as a child, maybe you attempted to do things that were along the lines of your purpose. I know that as a part of my own memory recovery, I recovered a ton of memories of telling people. As a child, I was telling people what I was going to do for a living, which is what I'm doing now. I didn't remember any of this. And people would say things to me like, even well-meaning people who thought they were helping me out by saying, don't get too big for your britches, right? Don't be too bold. Life knocks you down. Be cautious. Take it easy. Like, don't overdo it. Like, those things might not be possible. Even people who thought they were helping me out with that message, because clearly that's a message they were believing themselves. And these weren't necessarily malicious people, would shut me down on my purpose. Now, other people were being malicious. Like, they absolutely meant to do that. They wanted to shut it down. They wanted to make sure I never moved towards my purpose. But yes, I had no recollection of what my purpose was till I started on this journey. But my child knew it, like my inner child and my child self absolutely knew it, right? So it's good to get back to that, but it does take effort. It takes practice and kind of working on our healing journey and connecting with ourselves. Again, writing from those emotions is a huge help. Recovering those memories, which does happen as we write from our emotions, can help bring us back to those young parts that know exactly what we're here for. Really, we were born knowing what we're here for. I am still shocked by some of those memories. I'm like, how did I know? I was like a fortune teller. But of course, that's not the case. I knew back then, right? I hadn't shut it down yet. So another belief that we may be telling ourselves is that my fear is just too big and my purpose will always be impossible. Remember, this is one of those sort of defender lies that we say where, the defenders are trying to keep us from breaking those contracts, which could potentially feel to them really life-threatening, right? So they're coming in and saying the fear is too much. Now, what they're really saying is our fear is too much, so we're going to do everything possible to shut this down. So you might as well not try. Like, give up now because we're going to keep shutting it down, right? Like, that's really what they're saying, but they're saying it in this way of, there's just too much fear. You'll never get past it. And one of the things that drives me crazy that I hear about from people is like, when I'm reading things that say, oh, you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to do this, or you want to do that. It'll say things like, people in these kinds of roles are fearless, or they're really, really good at dealing with unpredictability. They don't have fear. And sometimes courage gets labeled as not fear. It's like almost like the opposite of fear. And I'm like, they're all getting it very, very wrong. I heard my daughter was taking this entrepreneur course. She still is. And it said something like that. It said, oh, people who are good at being entrepreneurs are people that are, can handle all sorts of unpredictability. And they're, but the way it was put, it was like, they don't have fear. I was just like, no, people who are entrepreneurs, we're still full of fear. We have tons of fear, but there's something in us that says, keep going anyway. And don't get me wrong, that's in everyone. We just may not be hearing it yet. We're supposed to move through the fear. We're supposed to sit with the fear. We're supposed to understand that the fear is a block that was created by our trauma. It doesn't have to define us and it doesn't have to stop us, right? But this idea that the fear just isn't there is wrong. And there's another message out there I've heard a few times from people that like kind of in the manifestation kind of world, or like, the Abraham Hicks kind of world, or law of attraction kind of stuff, where they'll say, if it's meant to be, it will be easy. Okay. That is super wrong. Like, I cannot tell you how wrong that is. I honestly believe that our inner resistance is the strongest when we are doing what we're meant to do most. Okay. Now, if we didn't have any of that resistance, if we had moved all that resistance out, that thing would in fact be pretty easy, because we actually have all of the raw skills and characteristics necessary to do that thing. And the universe wants us to do it. So if we didn't have any of the resistance, it would just sort of fall into place. But we are always going to have resistance. So it's not going to work that way. It's never going to be, it's meant to be, so therefore it's easy. That isn't how it's going to work. Now, when you move that resistance out, things do have a tendency to fall into place. That's after a pretty long journey of working with the resistance before that can actually happen, right? So let's see, Amy is saying, it's not easy, but I find the connections you need tend to fall into your lap, but you have to go through those open doors. It's really interesting you say that, because sometimes I'll be like, God, I really need help with this thing. And then the person will show up who's going to help me. This happened to me actually this last year. And then my system will shut it down, almost like, oh, I really wish I had this. And then it's there. And then I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. We just put the whole thing on hold. And I'm like, really? But it's like, once there does appear to be a path, and especially if that path does seem to be kind of easy, my defenders jump into action and shut me down from even kind of working with that thing that just literally is right in front of me and would be so helpful if I could just do it. This is actually how it works. So I actually know my next step that I need to take, and I've known for a little while, but my resistance is saying, no, you won't. You will not do that thing. Yes, self-sabotage, as Amy's saying. Totally. So the last one I want to talk about with just a couple minutes left here is the belief that there isn't room for everyone's purpose, right? Because as I said earlier, and this kind of goes along with this idea that our purpose has to be huge, big, massive. It's like this massive thing. And that means to the controller that there isn't room for everyone's purpose. So it's almost like if you get your purpose, then other people can't get their purpose, right? And so then it's like, oh, aren't you selfish that you want your purpose when other people don't have their purpose? And wow, that's not very nice, I mean, they will hit us from all the angles. They really will with these kind of belief systems. And the truth is that, yes, this world has room for everyone's purpose and what everyone is here to do. There is no doubt that there is room for it. Again, getting back to that idea that everyone is here for something different. And so, of course, we would have room for everyone's purpose. So think about that today as you're going through your, just connecting with yourself and really trying to get a sense of what you're doing here, why you're here, and I will say that if you were having any doubts about being here for something, and again, as Jeff said, healing is something, coming back to who you are, connecting with those parts, writing from those parts, and in particular, writing from the parts who are inundating you with fear about your next step, what you need to do and how you need to get there right from that. And this is where I talk a lot about this concept of resistance writing. This is what I call it, resistance writing. So let yourself do that resistance writing. No, you're not allowed. You can't do it. It's not going to work out. Why bother? It won't be good enough. It won't be big enough. And all that stuff that I talked about today. Let yourself explore your own inner resistance to that. And I will be talking to you guys next Tuesday, same time, same place. Thank you all so much for being here and for all your great feedback and thoughts on this topic. And I will see you then. Thank you all so much. Bye.